All right. Spell is a Vancouver, Canada based. Now they're a duo, a heavy metal slash rock slash progressive rock, synth rock, uh, a band that has a really interesting evolution, which I'd already gone through on my review of their last album, Opulent Decay. I thought Opulent Decay was their best record, and I think I still would probably say it's their best record for the sake of it being their most unique and most musical contribution with a lot of sort of esoteric ideas, a little bit of a sort of mystic occult feeling to it, and some classic or classic heavy metal influences. So uh, before that, I'd really been kind of nuts over their To None at All record in 2016. That was before I started the site. And just as a fan, I'd bought everything that they put out. I've been a fan of this band since their first, so their original full length. And I've appreciated the evolution of their sound, even though it does start to touch upon a lot of the mid to late 70s not quite yacht rock side of things, but the early 80s evolution of that sound where progressive rock and pop, sort of pop rock met up with heavy metal in different ways. Some people compare this sound to Rush because the bass guitar is pretty prominent, but nowadays you could just say they sound like Ghost or Cauldron or as a similar kind of band, and you've got kind of the idea. Here, their emphasis on catchier songwriting, standard songwriting, songcraft, makes for a very readable heavy rock record and one that's influenced by the pop music of the 80s and late 70s. So, uh, yeah, I mean, they name a lot of different influences for the record, and I think, well, the one that really, I don't really, I've listened to a lot of Blue Oyster Cult. I really don't think that this sounds like Blue Oyster Cult at all. Um, if you've heard more than their like five hits, or well, let's say two hits, you know that their records are actually very varied, and they started as more of a progressive rock band. And there's a lot there that we don't need to include with what this sounds like, but it puts you in a certain mindset that makes sense for this. Yeah, I think there's some King Crimson in here too. There's what is it? Camel is part of the way they put together songs, but these are more straightforward, obviously. And really, it is sort of synthesizer rock at the end of the day. Um, yeah, I think this is a hard one to recommend to a lot of the people that I generally share music with because it's one step beyond the sort of traditional heavy metal I would usually recommend, and it is inherently catchy in a way that's, it kind of belongs on the radio. And uh, so the only real note I have here is that there's a couple of songs in here that where they trade off the vocal duties, and they seem a little bit out of place at first. Souls in Chains and the final song, Watcher of the Seas. Well, a few of these songs here, Sarcophagus and Souls in Chains are what I'm talking about, are the ones where they trade off the vocals, and they feel a little bit out of place with the sort of hitmaker single-mindedness of the songwriting otherwise, and or the performances from the vocalist slash bassist. And it's not that they don't totally fit in the whole experience, but it's almost like they turn the page and then they go back to the first half with some of the mood on the album, and it doesn't really all come together until the final song, Watcher of the Seas. And I don't really like that song very much after listening to the album like 40 times. So that's sort of me summarizing how I felt about the album after listening to it way too much. I obviously sort of, I was happy to listen to something a little bit different and overplayed it. But that's always a good sign. That means I'll be able to come back to it later and instinctually know it and enjoy it. So not a bad thing. Uh, it's a very high recommendation for me based on my own taste. I think that most people would probably put it at a high 7 out of 10 or a 7.5, something like that. Just because the last album was a little bit more it had a little something that was special, and this is honing in on the more accessible aspects of that sound, really going for it. And I kind of don't like this type of album cover because to me, it feels like a stock image, even though it is a beautiful classic painting. So that I would understand if the score is lower, but the song stuck in my head long enough, and I enjoyed the music that it should get the score it's due in my mind. So decide for yourself, check it out, and see if you like it that much or less. That's up to you, not me.